Today's session is Protocol, Procedure, and Patient Acceptance with Implant Dentures, Part 2. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Adam Dreyfus, Corporate Account Manager for University, Government, and Institutions. Take it away, Adam.
Good morning, Jessica. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and welcome all the greater New York dental residents. I hope you all are doing well and starting to get not maybe accustomed to the warm weather, because tomorrow we're expecting maybe some snow, but you never know about New York, right? I first wanted to say thank you so much for all your continued support of me, of Dennis, of Jessica, of NDX, and all of your restorative partners. As we are all well aware, we know you have choices, so we really do appreciate you choosing NDX. With that being said, I do want to just give you a little bit of housekeeping before we start this presentation. Moving forward, you should be seeing emails coming from me with the email disclosure of @nationaldentex. We have officially migrated over away from the dentalservices.net, and we are now at nationaldentex.com. Unfortunately, you all are still stuck with me. With that being said, we really do appreciate your continued support. I do plan on coming into all your different clinics over the next few weeks, over the next few months. I want to see everybody, make sure that we're fulfilling all your needs. With that, it's enough about me. The esteemed, knowledgeable, senior member of our team, I'd like to turn it over to Dennis Urban for part 2 of this amazing presentation. Dennis, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Adam. That means I'm old. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jessica. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Yeah, this is part 2 of Protocol, Procedure, and Patient Acceptance with Implant Dentures. And we covered a lot the last time we got together, last month. So we'll go over some of the review here of what we covered. And you're looking at this now and say, wow, that's a lot of information in 45 minutes. So this is what we covered last month. Individual attachments versus a bar with attachments, overdenture protocol, attachment choices. We looked at ERAs and locators and Ryan 83 attachments. That's only 3 out of probably 100 attachments on the market, but pretty much 3 of the most popular. Framework strengtheners, communication on case planning. We looked at bar designs with overdenture cases, and then looked at some of the problems and solutions on relining locator cases. So then we moved over from overdentures, starting to get into the immediate low dentures, like the all-on-4 and all-on-6. We looked at implant placement for these types of cases with the angulated implants on all-on-4. And then we looked at multi-unit abutments where we're making a bar. And we touched on 3D planning and surgical guides and chair-side conversions, and then processing temporary cylinders and those chair-side conversions. And then we ended up with printed technology for transitional implant dentures. So that's a lot of information in 45 minutes. So we have a lot of more information today. So we're going to get started right now. So drink your coffee, wake up, and let's get going. Okay, so we're going to start with hybrid dentures or immediate load or all-on-4, all-on-6 dentures. We talked about implants last week, and I like the at least 6 implants on an upper. You can do all-on-4. If one fails, you're kind of in trouble. So I'd like to have that. If the bone density is there and we have the room, we can do 6 implants on an upper. That'd be great. So it's a good way to go. But we have to look at realistic patient expectations. Many times a patient will look at these types of cases and say, "Oh man, I want a screw retained hybrid restoration. I don't have to take it out of my mouth. I can leave it in there. I never have to worry about my dentures getting loose and falling out." And that sometimes we can't do that because there's not enough room. So we have to have realistic patient expectations. In that case, we might wind up just making an overdenture, which is fine. You can make an overdenture with a bar also, and it's cleansable. And then we have to look at the transition zone and things like that, which we're going to cover in a few minutes. So, we have to have realistic patient expectations, and that's why communication is key on the onset of the case. Visualize the end product on the onset of the case, and pretty much give that patient the expectations that are realistic. So, with that, let's look at the relative functional jaw capacity on the lower jaw. With all natural teeth, we're looking at 100% capacity, of course, in most cases, unless there's an occlusion problem. And then you have an implant-borne bridge, which we're going to be talking about today with a hybrid type case. And then we go down all the way down to that implant overdenture. It's about 60% functional capacity. And then for a lower denture, it goes down to 10. So you look at the different functional capacities with different appliances here and different restorations, and you can see how we really can improve the patient's life here with an implant borne or a screw retained type of case. So we have to take into some special considerations when we're making these types of cases also. So the requirements, of course, we need adequate bone volume for implant placement. Bone height more than 12 millimeters is great to allow for at least 10 millimeters of the length of implants. And this includes residual bone after tooth extractions, and bone width more than 6 millimeters to allow for about 4 millimeters of the diameter of 4 millimeter diameter implants, which is important also. So we need that room for a successful case. And limited grafting can be accomplished at the time of implant cases placement rather. So again, we need that adequate restorative volume that provides a space for at least 12 to 15 millimeters. That's a lot of space, and if we get anything less than that, we're not gonna have a successful case. You're going to have breakage. We're going to talk about breakage in a little while on these types of cases, especially with the denture cases, the implant dentures and hybrid dentures. And we have to have adequate AP or anterior-posterior spread for optimal positioning of implants to limit that cantilevering on these cases, because that can cause implant failure. Too much stress on an implant is going to cause failure. And then we have to look at that adequate coverage of the lip to hide the transition zone. And if you have too much of a transition zone there, you really have to go probably with an overdenture case, maybe with a bar with an overdenture case. And that's something we have to consider. So some of the treatment precautions, you have to see systematic health complications like bleeding disorder, metabolic diseases, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, all compromised immune systems. You have to look at that. Might not be able to do these types of cases. And of course, we need good bone quantity. So if you have poor bone quality and quantity, there's going to be a problem. So let's look at the review here. Precautions to look at: lack of bone quantity, limited arch curvature for poor AP spread, bone height less than 12 millimeters, and bone width less than 6 millimeters. Then you're in trouble. So you really have to have more than that, more than 12 and more than 6 millimeters, and adequate bone quality equal to greater than a type 3 type of bone that we saw earlier. And be careful that a high smile line. After spending all that money, the average is about $27,000 for these cases for these patients. After spending all that money and seeing that transition zone and the patient smiling, and all you see is black hole in the mouth, that's bad. Then we should have done something a little bit differently. So just keep that in consideration. So when we talk about anterior-posterior spread, you're looking at a line through the centermost of the anterior implant. Okay, anterior-most implant, then a line through the distal of the most distal implant, and you multiply that by 1.5, and that's where you get your anterior-posterior spread. If you go any more distal than that, you're going to have a problem. So you look at these cases on the right-hand side. These are nice cases, and patients look for that first molar occlusion on these types of cases. In this type of case, we had to really go just to the second bicuspid here. We probably could have put a molar in there, but as you can see that we couldn't go any further distal, because there would have been a problem with that. Too much pressure on that posterior most implant. So dentalist patients expect that posterior first molar occlusion, but sometimes we can't do that. So I've done cases where we put the first bicuspid and then the first molar in there, and to compensate for that. So as long as it's good occlusion, what we do is, if you take that measurement, multiply it by 1.5, and this number offers you the distance that can be cantilevered off the most distal implant. So a little bit complicated. The good news is a lot of this is done now by the companies making these bars, and they're also, when you're designing these bars, it's in the software. A lot of it helps you out when you're designing. So I used to design bars on the software. I used to have to figure out this, this AP spread, and now it's done for us, with the software, or else the implant company like Nobel or Zimmer or whoever we're using to make these bars, Panthera, they'll do that for us now, which is great. So we have to take into consideration restorative space. This type of case here, I think we're going to have plenty of restorative space. That gum is going to recede, the gingiva is going to recede a little bit. Hopefully there's good bone quantity here. and we should be okay with this type of case here, but, and there's plenty of room. But we have a case like this where there's a lot of bone, we might need some bone reduction here. And once that bone reduction is enough, hopefully we have that amount of space that we need to make that that denture, the hybrid denture, and that restoration. And we have to look at everything that's included in this, and that's going to be implants, acrylic, the bar, teeth, everything in between, space underneath the bar. We'll review this in a minute. So a lot of things to take into consideration. So. I hear a lot of clinicians say, "Oh, I want to start doing these cases and let's get going." And I kind of push back a little bit and say, "Let's start from scratch and let's start with the communication and the case planning on these to make sure it's the right case for the patient." So look at the restorative space we need. 12 to 15 millimeters. I would love to get at least 14 to 15 millimeters on these cases because I've done hundreds of these cases over the years, and anything less than that is going to be a problem, like I mentioned earlier. So that abutment is about 3 millimeters. The hybrid bar is about 3 millimeters. That space from between the bar or the acrylic area and the tissue, it should be at least 1 millimeter. It's just so the patient can cleanse it, and the hygiene can be present when that patient is. Otherwise, without that hygiene, I've seen a lot of these cases going intra-orally and working chair side with the clinician. And even after about 3 to 4 months, if it's not cleansable, it's horrible. It's disgusting because the patient can't clean and cleanse underneath these hybrid cases, and it gets it's bad. So you want to make sure it's cleansable. The patient's able to cleanse it with a water pick and just get underneath there. So one millimeter space is really important. So then we have our acrylic and our teeth. Now when we talk about the acrylic and the teeth, we need at least 3 to 4 millimeters worth of acrylic, and the teeth. If you start grinding these teeth on a ridge lap and making them too thin, there's going to be a problem. There's not going to be, first of all, you want a good bond between the tooth and the acrylic. And when you start compromising the acrylic thickness and the teeth thickness, you have a problem here because the forces of the patient chewing down and biting down in these types of cases, it seems to be it's a lot forceful than with a regular denture. So the teeth are wearing out a lot quicker, there's more force, and teeth break easier. And the acrylic breaks. So just keep all that into consideration, something to consider when you plan these types of cases. And you're looking at the transition line here, that junction between the natural pink and the artificial pink or the gingiva affected by lip mobility, smile line, and the amount of bone and the size of the teeth. So on the left-hand side, we really had to do a flange here. And this is a type of overdenture case. And, this is, something like this is not going to be too cleansable if it's a hybrid type case. And even on the right-hand side, patients smiling here. Yeah, we might be able to get away with that a little bit, but you see where that posterior region is, we can start seeing that real big transition zone here. So this may be a problem also. So just take that into consideration. All these things affect the overall success of the case. And what about tissue contact? Look at this case here. The tissue contact was so strong on here that, there wasn't that space between the gingiva of the acrylic and the tissue. And look what happened. Look at the patient. And this could have been a case where the patient might have had an allergic reaction to monomer, and they had an issue like this. But you shouldn't have to have an issue like this with these types of cases because it should be cleansable. And like I mentioned before, the average fees for the patient is a lot. It's talking about $27,000. It's probably gone up a little bit now, but that's a lot. So it's a lot of money for this patients here. It's great for us, and it's profitable. But the ultimate goal is patient satisfaction on these types of cases. Let's talk about the protocol. That's what I named this presentation "Protocol, Procedure, and Patient Acceptance," and all that we have to take into consideration. So we cannot deviate from the protocol on these types of cases. So the first thing we're going to do is take that preliminary impression. And many times with the preliminary impression, I'll put this on a semi-adjustable or fully adjustable articulator. I'll look at the opposing. I'll look at the upper and lower, make sure that we have enough room, what kind of occlusal scheme we're going to need, and if we can proceed with this type of case. So with this type of case here, we definitely need to do a preliminary impression. The second visit is going to be our custom tray impression. And then we're going to final impression back at the laboratory. We'll make that master cast. And then with that master cast, we're going to make a verification index to verify that impression was accurate. And then we're also going to make a base plate and bite run. And what I'll do sometimes on the base plate and bite rim, I'll put a temporary cylinder in there just to hold it in place so you can take an accurate occlusal rim. We'll get into more detail in a few minutes. So, and then if everything looks good, the verification index was good, everything lines up correctly, and if you take a bite registration, we'll give you a tooth setup, and then everything looks good with the occlusion and the tooth setup. Then we can send this off to have this mill bar done, and then we can go from there. So, and then we can have a mill bar finished, and we also have to do, after the mill bar comes back, we'll have a try-in with the bar and a denture teeth on it. And I'll show you that more in detail in a few minutes. And once you try that in, everything looks great, and we can go to process and finish. So it's pretty much 7 steps. It's a long procedure. It is, but it's a lot of work and a lot of things to consider for the success of this type of case. Again, let's review here. We're going to fabricate, after we get that final impression, fabricate that soft tissue master cast from the impression, as you can see here. And then we're going to fabricate that rigid verification index, and then at the same time, an occlusal wax rim. And then you're going to verify that the master cast is correct by trying that verification index. And what happens sometimes too, well, if there's more than 4 implants, it could be 6 or 8 implants. What we'll do sometimes is have the doctor just make a cut in the center of the verification index, and then lute it together with some pattern resin. And we get it back to the laboratory. We do something called an altered cast. I know I'm getting too deep into this, but we do something called an altered cast, and this is going to verify that everything is accurate. So with the bite registration and occlusal records, you still want to, take into consideration what you do when you're making a full denture. We still need to have that midline, cuspid line, high lip line, and everything put into that upper wax rim to help us with the denture setup. And you want to verify the shade of the teeth with the patient. And then we're going to utilize, when you're taking that bite occlusal rim, utilize those temporary cylinders to keep these bite rims in place. So I might have 1 or 2 temporary cylinders in there, so you can actually screw these into the implant. So we're planning now for a final bar and final restoration. The patient already has their temporary transitional restoration in the mouth, but now we're planning for this final restoration here. So I want to make sure everything has to be right up to speed with what we're doing. So I use something called a Prima splint material. You can use pattern resin when we're doing these verification indexes, but Prima splint has no shrinkage, no expansion, so it's accurate. So I love using this material. And all I'm doing is just wrapping this material. It comes in a rope form. I wrap it around the temporary cylinders, and then put it in the light cured unit for about maybe 3 to 4 minutes, and you have an accurate verification index. So this is very good material. It's simple and works fairly easy. So if everything looks good, like I mentioned earlier, that verification index is good. We're ready to go to a setup for trying. We want to set these teeth up, make sure everything looks good. The occlusion is right, patient's accepting it, the patient's happy with the shade and the type of setup we're doing. So let's dig a little bit deeper here on setting the denture teeth. I'm not going to go into a whole setup course here. I just want to get on give you the key points of setting these denture teeth here. So number 1, on these types of cases, full arch cases like this, especially full mouth rehabilitation and things like that, I want to use a semi-adjustable or fully adjustable articulator. I want to mimic true jaw relationship on these types of cases. And these types of articulators, they have at least 110 millimeter intercondylar distance on them, so we can really mimic that true jaw function while we're at the bench making these cases. So this is a really important factor. I'm not going to get too much into this. And even an added plus is when we get a facebow transfer. So let's talk about setting denture teeth. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but some of the key points that we need to focus on is, how do we select these anterior teeth, on these, when we start with these cases. And then we'll talk about posterior teeth too, and different occlusal schemes. So we look at the face. Let's divide the face here. I'm going to divide it down the middle. Pupil line is equal to the occlusal plane. So we have to take that into consideration. That Camper's plane is from the tip of the nose to the middle of the ear. And we draw a midline, and through the midline of the face here. And all this we have to take into consideration when we're setting our denture teeth. And then we have our cuspid lines, a high lip line, and all this information that you give us from the operatory to the laboratory is going to make us feel like we actually have that patient at the bench with us. And we have to fill that intra-occlusal space sometimes of 40 millimeters or more. So we have some of the information that we need, including anatomical landmarks and things like that. So real important. So we're picking out these anterior teeth. We can pick out these teeth by looking at the shape of the upper arch. Usually the shape of the upper arch is the shape of the centrals. And this is like 95 to 96% of the time. This is what I've done all these years picking out anterior teeth. And then you can measure on that occlusal rim also from cuspid to cuspid, and then go to the tooth chart that the manufacturer gave you, and it'll give you the range of what to utilize for the size of the anterior teeth. So a couple of ways you can pick out anterior teeth, and you have to look at the 6 anteriors, the shape, the width, and of course the shape. And usually facial form equals tooth form. The shape of the face is going to be the shape of your central, and this is like 98, 99% of the time. So, and it's an old, this is old slides here, but it's still applicable today on picking out anterior teeth. Square face, square tooth, square tapering face, square central. So same type of scenario. And then we look at the anterior teeth. Usually the tips of the canines are equal to the width of the nose, and the width of the centrals are equal to the width of the philtrum. So we have some nice anatomical landmarks to utilize when we're picking out anterior teeth. We want something that's going to be harmonious and aesthetic for the patient also. So we go through all this trouble picking out teeth. We have to, deciding what size teeth to use, we have to use the correct denture teeth, especially on these types of cases. Like I mentioned earlier, these denture teeth wear faster than they usually do on a regular full denture. So we want to have something that's going to wear like natural dentition. So we want something with a good material. A polymethyl methacrylate is great. This is a tooth by Vita. Ivoclar has the same type of tooth, and Array's Culture. All those companies are looking into what's going to last the longest for these types of cases. And you want a homogeneous material throughout the entire tooth. And one of the things I've seen over the years, when you're grinding denture teeth that are inferior denture teeth, and you grind through the first layer, there's a softer layer underneath. And we have natural dentition hitting against that, or even denture teeth is going to wear a lot quicker. So you want something with high mechanical strength, something that's going to be tissue friendly and plaque resistant, color stable, and something that's going to give you chip-free grinding when you're adjusting these in the mouth. So, and look at this denture tooth that's going to be the same size as the natural teeth, and something with high wear resistance. And I like an anterior tooth with lingual anatomy, which is going to give us better phonetics. Many times with denture patients, even with hybrid cases, they have trouble in the beginning with speaking and phonetics. And to give them lingual anatomy on these denture teeth, it really adds to it. So you can see lingual anatomy on these teeth here on this denture that I made. We have rugae, we have natural lingual anatomy, and it's going to make the patient feel a lot better when they're speaking. And something with a wider occlusal surface on the posterior teeth is going to help the patient in chewing and swallowing. Yeah, it's nice to have a case look great, but we want it functional also. And looking at these denture teeth now, the quality of the denture teeth out on the market now, they're like ceramic crowns. They look beautiful, so we have translucency, opalescence, and good function and good morphology on these teeth also. So when we're doing these upper and lower anterior setups, the anteriors are positioned individually and parallel to the pupil line, and the lower incisal edges are parallel to the upper incisal edges. So when we're picking out a posterior teeth, most of the time we're looking at an occlusal scheme called lingualized occlusion, but 72% of laboratories are using semi-anatomical and anatomical teeth. So these are the different types of anatomies out there for the occlusion. You have monoplane, which is a 0-degree tooth. You have lingual contact, a combination of lingual contact and a smaller degree of tooth. This is a whole other seminar. I just wanted to mention the options out there, but most of the time we're using lingualized occlusion on these teeth. And typically, the smaller the ridge, the less degree of cuspal inclination. So if you have like maybe a smaller ridge, you might want to use a 15-degree cuspal inclination on the posterior tooth. If you have something, a larger ridge or a bonier ridge, you might want to use something 23 to a 33-degree type of cuspal inclination on posterior teeth. But the important thing is we want to align those occlusal surfaces towards the center of the cranium, and that's your curve of Wilson. The only time I'm not utilizing a curve of Wilson, as you can see on the right-hand side, is when I'm utilizing lingualized occlusion. I'll have a curve of Spee. I'm not going to have a curve of Wilson because I want that lingual cusp of the upper to fall right into the central fossa of the lower to relieve any off-axis stress on the implant. Really important. So let's go over our notes here. Want to make sure the central fossa of the posterior teeth are on a lower ridge. We don't want to deviate from that. It's not going to be, it's going to create an unstable denture, even with implants. Check your vertical inclination of the posterior teeth, your curve of Spee, and your curve of Wilson. Real quick review here. From buccal to lingual is your curve of Wilson, and from anterior to posterior is your curve of Spee. So now we have that harmonious transition to the posteriors, a nice completed individual anterior setup, and a posterior with that harmonious inclination towards the anterior. So let's just touch on lingualized occlusion. Let me just check my time here. How are we doing here? Oh, perfect. We got plenty of time. Cool. All right. So lingualized occlusion. Years ago, when we were making these types of cases, even with full cases, a lot of full dentric patients like lingualized occlusion because it reduces the atrophy too on the bone and the ridges. But lingualized occlusion over the years has been proven really successful for implant cases. So you're talking about that lingual cusp, like you see here, going right into the central fossa of the lower tooth. And years ago, we had to use a combination of a higher degree of tooth on the upper and a lower degree of tooth on the lower. And now we have specialized teeth. These happen to be Vita teeth, which I have to say I was involved in designing these when I worked for Vita. Just went over to Germany and helped design these. And they fit together like a puzzle when you're setting these up. But the important thing is, you have all these other occlusal schemes here you can choose from. But this is a proven method that's going to relieve that off-axis stress, and it's for implant-supported overdentures or implant-supported dentures, and it's going to reduce the lateral side-to-side forces on an implant, and lateral forces could cause that implant to fail. As you can see, the buccal flush, the upper are flared out a little bit. That's going to help with moving that cheek away, and it's going to eliminate some cheek biting also. So once we have that successful setup done, a try-in, and we try it into the office here and the patient's happy, then we're ready to make that bar. So this is the exciting part. So you did all that work, all the preliminary work. Now we're ready to send our setup, our putty index, and a soft tissue model to the milling facility. And there's a lot of milling facilities out there. We utilize our implant companies. We utilize, either Nobel, or implant company of using Panthera. There's a lot of great companies out there that make these bars, and they make them beautifully. Really do a great job. So I'm going to make a putty index or matrix of this denture setup. This is going to give us an idea of how much room we have between the denture teeth and the bar, as you can see here. So we have over here, I could probably use a little bit more room on here, it's also going to maintain the position of these teeth, so we know where to put these teeth when we reset these teeth on the bar when the bar comes back. So there's your hybrid bar. So we'll send this over. Say, for instance, we send them Nobel. And we send this to them. A few days later, we're going to get some 3D images into the laboratory. And there's a lot of different types of bars out there. So we're going to get an image with how the bar looks, how the denture looks on top of the bar, and the access holes. Sometimes I'll see that the access holes are maybe a little too lingual or a little too buccal. We have to adjust that. Sometimes the bar is too far anterior, and I don't have enough room for teeth or acrylic. And it's up to me to look at this and judge, we need more room here. Let's redesign this. So a lot of different aspects. You can see the almost like a ghost-like image here of the bar. This gives me an idea how much room I have. It's just not much room there, right? You look at those bicuspids there on the right-hand side. There's not that much room, so I might tell them just to tuck that bar in a little bit more lingually so I could give me a little bit more room, So if, and the access holes, I've had access holes come through the buccal of a anterior tooth or a central. Who wants to go through all this trouble making these types of cases and then drill an access hole through the middle of the central and then putting composite over it? We don't want to do that. So we want to plan accordingly. So, and here's another 3D image. So once we accept the 3D image, we're ready to go. And we say, okay, go to completion, mill the titanium bar, and we're good to go. So, and these are some of the images. So you have a lot of bars to choose from. These are the older bars that we used to make with the wraparound bars. We used to get a lot of breakage on these types of bars. The acrylic would break off, and they weren't too successful. I don't really do too many of these anymore. Then you have the round bar. This is another case. This is another type of bar. There were a lot of breakages. So now I'm using more of a hybrid bar design, and I'm going to show you what some of the designs in a little while. Some few of the cases that I've done. They have a Montreal bar design, which is great. It's almost like a finished lingual finish, almost like a partial denture. And with these types of cases, I spoke to many dentists around the country over the years. I said, I don't want to get involved with hybrid dentures. They always break. Well, I'm going to show you my secret design in a little while on how to eliminate that breakage. I haven't had a breakage on a bar in over 6 years, with my technique. So I'm going to show you what I do in a little while here. So, but first once that comes back to the laboratory, I want to transfer that wax try-in over the implant bar. So this is what I utilize. This is what I do. This is my method here. And I'll take a Putty Intex. This is an Artex articulator. I'll have the original setup. For instance, we're doing an upper here. I have that original setup. I'll close that upper setup into that Putty Index. You can see all the indentations of the teeth here. And many times those teeth will come over to the other side of the into the Putty Index. At this point, I'll screw that bar onto the upper model. And then I'm going to put some molten wax where the teeth are and on the bar. I want to make sure I draw some sort of indication on the model where these access screws on. Otherwise, I was spending a lot of time trying to find these screws. So I squeeze the whole thing down into the wax here, let it cool down, and look what happens. All the teeth come over to the other side of the bar. So I did a 14 tooth setup in a matter of 5 to 10 seconds. Really, it's amazing. So I allow that to cool. And then we start cleaning it up and waxing it up. And then we open the access holes up and we send it back to you for the try-in. And there's a try-in. It's a wax try-in on a bar. So we have to send you a beautiful case here. I try to make it look like the finished case. And so you'll try this in, patient accepts it, and we're ready to go to a finish. And this is that Montreal bar I talked about earlier with that lingual finish on there. I like these types of bars, and it's cleansable and it's strong. It works out really well. So this I have to clean up the lingual a little bit to clean that wax off, and there's the finish, the wax up with the try-in with the access holes. So this is a very nice case here. So you have very cleansable, very clean, very light. So that's what you want, this type of case. So let's talk about masking the bar or opaquing the bar. I was kidding around with Adam and Jessica before. I found yesterday in the archives here, my archives of videos, a video of me doing my technique with masking the bar, which is great because I want to show you. It's about 2-minute videos. You'll get to see how we do this. And this procedure, using the materials I'm going to show, really eliminates the breakage of teeth off a bar if you're using the right acrylic and you're using the right teeth. So let's talk about this. I'll go through this real quick here. This is that bar that we showed earlier. This is that hybrid bar this is from Nobel. This is a big bar. So we had to use a lot of material. We don't want any teeth breaking off here. What do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 implants on this. So, but real quickly, I'm going to show you, we're using a material called BMC Flow. And this is the bar after it's opaque. But let's go through the procedure here. And this is after it's processed. And you can see the tissue side and the buccal side here. And so it's really important that we get the strength that we need from the materials that we're using. Otherwise, it's going to be a failure. So this particular bar on the left-hand side, you can see there's like grooves in there. They carve grooves in these. This still has a chance of breaking. If you're going to put grooves like this, we should put grooves the other way also. Not just cylindrical like you see here. But I'm going to show you this video here, and it's going to just bear with me. It's about a 2-minute video, and I'm going to show you my procedure here. So let's see how it works here.
Good. First thing we want to do when we're priming and opaquing a bar is put metal primer. Take a little bit of metal primer. Apply it to the bar. See it okay?
So we're applying that metal primer to the bar after it's been roughened up or sandblasted. Make sure we cover everything. This is going to create a bond.
Okay. After the metal primer, we take a pre-opaque. Clean our brush. We apply the pre-opaque to the bar.
This is a secret to a strong bond right here, this pre-opaque.
Be sure you cover all areas of the bar. And what the pre-opaque is doing, it's creating a great bond between the regular opaque material and the bar. And when we go to process the case, we'll create a great bond between the acrylic and the opaque and the bar. go.
Okay.
After that, we put it in the light cured unit for about 3 minutes. Shut up.
Start.
All right, next I take this out of the light cure unit and I have a nice coat of pre-opaque on here. Clean my brush. I apply our regular gingiva opaque material. If you want, there are 5 other shades of opaque material, from light to dark. Next thing we do is start covering our bar with.
So we're going to cover our bar here, and then we're going to put it in a light cure
You can
unit.
give this another coat after you cure it, if you don't feel like there's enough on here covering the metal.
So yeah, I wanted, that's another couple of minutes here, that video, and we don't have that much time, but I wanted to show you just the success I've had with that method. And I would put on another coat after that. Look, I would put another coat on after that, and then you'd have a nice strong bond between the denture acrylic and the bar. And I haven't had any breakages with this type of technique. So I wanted to show you that so you can request that, when we're doing these types of cases here. So we're talking about denture bases, ready to process this case. We went through all this trouble of planning and going through all the procedures. We want a denture base that's going to have a natural look, a variety of gingival shades. And we have those gingival shades to match the opaque also that I showed you earlier. We want something that's going to be impact resistance and also have flexural strength. But it can't have one without the other. So it's really important to have. And my favorite is Diamond D acrylic. It works really well with these types of cases. You can see these dentures I made up on top here, all different shades. And then it's also utilized for digital technology also. But that high impact resistance with the flexural strength is going to lead to a successful case. And we look at some of the denture processing techniques out there, still have 55% of the laboratories are still using that press pack technique, and injection is second, and light cure is last. This is the latest survey that was done in the industry. But there's a lot of different techniques you utilize. And I also like the ivory-based system that injects that denture. That works a great technique also. That gives you a great fit. And one of the best, probably one of the most accurate ways to process a case. This is your conventional investing and packing. And one of the other processing techniques a lot of people don't know about is microwave technology. And basically what we're using a special material from Diamond D here and a special flask. And we invest the waxed up denture, and you can utilize this with implant cases too. We invest the denture, as you can see here, in plaster and stone. We boil out the denture, soften up the wax in the microwave oven, 500 to 700 watt microwave oven for like a minute and a half. Boil out the wax, prepare it for processing. We press pack it, as you can see here, and it's a 4-minute cure. And what this does, it cures the denture in 4 minutes. It cures from the inside out, and it's dispersing any free monomer. So you have a patient that's allergic to monomer or anything like that, this is the material to use. So after 4 minutes, it's cured. We let it cool down, and there's the finished denture, as you can see here. So it's a great way to process a denture and get that flexural strength and an impact resistance that you need. Great. Then if we want, we really can adjust this and match the patient's gingiva by adding denture-based stain. So a lot of times we're asked to do this, and what I'll do is I'll roughen up the surface of the denture. I'll start applying these different gingival stains to it to match the patient's natural gingiva. I light cure it in between for about 15 seconds, and I'll start applying more shades so I can match that exactly. And then I finish and polish it, and it comes out beautifully. And this is the finished results. So if we have a patient who really wants to, you have that transition zone, and you want a patient to smile to look like they have natural gingiva, this is the way to go. So there's a couple of different systems out there in the market. Arrayus, Ivoclar, you have Vita, a lot of different companies are making these types of systems here. So, and there's your finished denture. This is a little exaggerated here, but this is a lot of denture-based stain on here. But this is a beautiful denture right here, and that's just a regular denture. So we're going to finish up the seminar here. I want to just show you this overdenture case I did years ago, maybe about 5 to 6 years ago. And I wrote a 2-month article, two-part article for IDT magazine, Inside Dental Technology for Aegis Communications. And we had this one patient here, and this is Josh. And he went through high school with a couple of orthodontic bands and a wire with a few denture teeth hanging off the wire. and look at his bite. And so we had to do something on this case here, and we had to come up with a great solution. And I had a hard time doing that. So I met with the doctor, the periodontist, and we sat there for an hour. We couldn't figure it out. So I took the case back to the laboratory, looked at it. I decided, no, this patient can't get implants right now because he's had a lot of health issues. Let's do some post and core attachments with these post and core and with attachment on top. So what I did, this particular case, I waxed up these copings with Ryan 83 equator attachments on top of them. So this is going to give that patient the retention the patient needs on this overdenture case. And then this is after the case, the cast and polished with the attachments on top of it. Doctor took an impression and glued these in the mouth and cemented them in. Took an impression, and these are your impression copings. Got that back at the laboratory, and I poured a model, and then I articulated it. And look at what I had to deal with. So I had to come up with a solution here. And what we did here, this type of case here, I used a material. It's a thermoplastic material called acetyl resin, and I made a framework. So before I did that, I set these denture teeth on the anterior region and so a couple of posterior teeth. I wanted to compensate for that malocclusion. So this is after it's injected. What I took out some of those denture teeth and utilized this duracetyl or acetyl resin material, which is a thermoplastic, and injected it in place of those denture teeth. And this is the framework I had. So I finished this framework here. I put it on a model. Then I put some opaque on the duracetyl material, and you can see these posterior teeth. These are all this is acetyl resin. These aren't real denture teeth. I wanted something that wasn't going to be sturdy and it's going to go over the patient's natural teeth. I wanted it to be sturdy, and also I wanted it to be aesthetic. I set these anterior teeth, the denture teeth, and then I'm ready to process the case. You can see it's going over that first molar on the left-hand side here. And this is a true overdenture going over the natural teeth, and it compensated for that malocclusion. I only brought this case out to edge-to-edge occlusion on this type of scenario. And then I put these attachments internally. I processed the Ryan 83 attachments. I utilized a material called VersaCryl. It's a soft reline material that softens up at the warmth of the mouth and kind of seals everything up so the patient doesn't have any hygiene issues. So I got a call from the doctor. I wanted to know if I wanted to be chairside on this case. I said, sure. So we worked through this whole case for this planning. It took a lot of planning. Everything was done pro bono. Everything was contributed by the manufacturers, the implant companies, and not implant companies, the attachment companies. And we finished this case. So I went in the office when it was going to be inserted. And this is Josh before and after. This case went perfectly. So what Josh had to deal with previously, and look how Josh looks now. So this thing snapped in perfectly. Went in the mouth, the occlusion was good, had no problem with sore spots or hygiene. And Josh said to me, he goes, "Now, thank God, then," said, Mr. Urban, what you did here, now I know what it feels like to have natural teeth. So this is a successful case. I wanted to show one of the scenarios we run across every day in our industry, whether you're a dentist or a dental technician, and it's very rewarding. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us again today. Thanks so much. We talk about artistry through denture technology. And that's great to have you. I'd love to share my expertise with you, and I hope you can carry that on into your practice. Thank you.
Dennis, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today. Again, just a plethora of information, and I thank you for sharing it with everybody. I know that everyone's going to have to get ready for clinic, but there's something that I wanted to bring up that was spoken about during this presentation. Dennis mentioned a fair amount of manufacturers' names. Please know that National Dentex, NDX, is committed to working with multiple partners throughout the industry. But I want to make this very clear, as I've said in other presentations, but I'll say it again. We vet all these processes before we bring them to market. There is no quote unquote guinea pig situation that goes on, and especially this group, please know that it is extremely protected. We do not roll out anything before we speak to your leadership that will support these endeavors. As well, Dennis started bringing up material selections about people who might be allergic to monomer or whatever it might be. There is so much information out there. Please know that we are your partner when it comes to knowledge of materials. There's no better person to ask a question to about materials than your dental technician. They are walking encyclopedias. I know in the medical industry, everyone relies on their pharmacist when it comes to prescriptions. Rely on your dental technician when it comes to different materials, because quite honestly, they work with it every day, multiple times a day. As I've said this before, and I'll say it again, we're here for you today, tomorrow, and for the future. Your right hand is usually your assistant. Your left hand is going to be your laboratory. Please know that we want to be your lab partner moving forward. We thank you for your time. We thank you for your participation. Please provide your feedback, if it's in writing, if it's a phone call, if it's face-to-face when I come into your clinics, whatever it might be. We are here to learn from you as well. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next month, but I do plan on seeing you all within the next few weeks. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay warm. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye now.